That's a really great cup of coffee. Hello and welcome everyone for joining us for our next Ready Set live stream. The theme for this event is Ready Set Connected Workforce and answering the ultimate question, what does great coffee have to do with virtual infrastructure? My name is Greg Neerman and I'll be hosting this event for the next hour with a spectacular set of presenters and panelists. But let's start off. Let's be honest. Most people I talk to are frustrated, unhappy, and generally grinding through their days, isolated and glued to their monitors. In normal times, we talked about the balance of people, process, and technology to guide us to success. Principally, that hasn't changed, but the definitions of each of those has taken a greater significance. How are we taking care of ourselves and adjusting our mindset? How are we evolving our processes to better adapt to our new normal? How are we best leveraging technology to create a seamless experience for our remote teams? Let's introduce our presenters, starting with our keynote presenter, Dave Asprey. Dave is the creator of Bulletproof Coffee, the founder of Bulletproof 360, three-time New York Times bestselling science author, host of award-winning podcast Bulletproof Radio, and he's also has a very rich background in Silicon Valley and particularly in virtual desktops and remote work. I'm also joined by Chuck Foley, Senior Director at NetApp, who will discuss the challenges and opportunities of deploying and managing virtual desktops in the public cloud to keep you and your workforce happy, healthy, and connected, just like great coffee makes you feel. We'll then have what I hope will be a very lively panel discussion with representatives across the industry. First up, Bob Medeo, VP of Marketing at Sharp, Greg Scholes, founder and analyst at Storage.io, and Scott Manchester, Partner Group Program Manager, Cloud Managed Desktops at Microsoft. And if you're watching this on LinkedIn or YouTube, we encourage you to add your questions and comments in the live streams directly or on Twitter using the hashtag NetAppReadySet. And we'll do our best to get to those live or with our teams in those channels. And please, if you haven't yet, go to kahoot.it and use pin 492209 and sign up for a fun trivia contest. We're going to have some great prizes later on in this stream. We've got some great books to give away during the live stream. And with the introductions out of the way, let's talk about how we're working these days. And Dave, let's cut to it. What does great coffee have to do with virtual infrastructure?
Way more than you might think. In fact, the thinking behind virtual infrastructure is what led me to create the company called Bulletproof. And I'm not just waving this around to show off the logo. I'm just trying to make my brain work fast enough to share all this cool stuff with you guys. So when I worked in Silicon Valley at the beginning of my career, I weighed 300 pounds. And I weigh about 200 pounds now. Very big difference. So the stereotypical fat computer hacker from the first Jurassic Park, drinking Jolt Cola and all that stuff. Well, it turns out that what my body was doing was caching energy inappropriately. So I was walking around with what I'm just going to call a bloated infrastructure. And what that means biologically, it is that my brain didn't work as well as it could because I couldn't get the right energy. I couldn't get the right nutrients to it. So while I'm working on, teaching virtualization and cloud and all these things, the very first generation of it at the University of California down there in Santa Clara, I was also really struggling on the inside and feeling like crap and not really having my brain work the way I wanted it to work. And I started thinking, well, wait a minute. We understand all these algorithms around moving data around even moving energy around in data centers, and then moving desktops around, all these amazing caching things. And I realized the body's trying to do the same thing. And I took the hacker mindset, the optimization mindset that has become very mathematically rigorous and frankly, almost miraculous, the way we can put data where it needs before we really need it, and said, all right, how can that mindset work on fixing my own biology? And I set off on this path. I ended up spending $1 million on it, of how do I actually make my biology work better than it does now, and better really even than it was originally architected to do. And now I am faster, measurably, cognitively faster. I weigh less, my body works better, and every measure of health that I have is better than it was before. One of the things that became most important from an infrastructure management perspective and a biological management perspective was that you actually need control. You need to know what's going on in there so you can then say, I want this to happen, and I don't want that to happen. My first job out of college was managing desktops for 500 physicians. I was the only guy doing it, walking around in my double extra large t-shirt without enough coffee. And I said, wow, this is incredible. All I do is walk around and plug things in and do these things. And eventually I look for remote desktop management, but that wasn't enough because stuff kept breaking. And you fast forward to where we are today, and you can literally dial up virtual desktops because of that element of control. And what does that have to do with coffee? Well, it turns out you would never know when you get your cup of coffee the amount of infrastructure that went in place behind it. And every step of the way when I make the bulletproof beans is controlled. And you don't have to think about it because it's done. And that means lab testing beyond what's required because you have standards. At least I have standards for my coffee. And just like that, for your own security, your own HIPAA, for all the things you have to deal with, you have your own standards. But if you don't have control, you can't do it. And if the desktops are scattered everywhere, you just don't do it. And the second thing is you need security on it. Now you might say, what do I need security for my coffee for, Dave? You're really overselling this. Except I'm not. Because if you knew what was going on with your coffee, you'd be offended. Because there's a common toxin in coffee called OTA. If you're a technologist kind of person, you want to Google that, you can. And, well, most countries have made it illegal to sell coffee with this in it, except not in the US. So when it's illegal to sell coffee in Japan or China or South America or Europe, they send it to the US and then we drink it. Okay. Did you know that? Probably not. In my mind, is that a system level penetration of the security of our coffee? I actually believe it is. And so you don't have to pay much attention to it if you're just drinking a cup of coffee, if you're in the office, especially because you don't have any control over it. And what's happened now with virtual desktops is everyone's at home. So what are we doing? We're actually saying there's no way to control this stuff. There's enough kids walking around in the background. There's enough background noise. And there's enough lack of security, lack of standardization that we're never going to fix it. And little Johnny comes in and breaks something on someone's machine that they shouldn't, and your head's going to explode. The only solution that I can see for this at scale is virtual desktops. Likewise, you're going to have to start caching things like your coffee, and you already do that now. So you have beans that you probably didn't have at home now. You have maybe coffee pods. You have a system for it. It used to all be centralized at the office, but now you're decentralized. Your coffee is decentralized, and you have a system to do it. So now how do you do that? You probably have subscription to get it. So when you think about supply chains, you think about how you get what you get, it is not different between the stuff you drink, the stuff you eat, and the stuff that you actually are consuming on your desktop. It is about elegant caching in order to keep things where they belong and make sure that you have what you need to be connected, whether it's your computer or whether it's actually your brain to be connected. And that's the similarities, but they don't even stop there. If you go way back, no one has to think about what kind of NIC, like network interface card, is on their computer anymore because it's all been just pushed into the background and all that. But then when you're running systems like this, you actually really do have to say someone handled it somewhere in your network stack. And it turns out that when you cache things effectively, much of that infrastructure annoyance just goes away. So there you have it. That idea that you can optimize your infrastructure by moving things around. You can do the same thing in your brain. You can do the same thing with that annoying thing that hangs over your waistband, your love handles. Those are all just stuff that's cached in the wrong place. So when you become more efficient, more lean as an organization, as a technical infrastructure, you actually could do the same thing to become physically more lean as a human being. And I've written a ton about that stuff. I'm not going to be able to teach you that in 10 minutes. But what I can tell you is the algorithms that do that are the same. It's a system where you say, okay, how do I allocate resources? You just have to do it better. And when you do it better in a company, you end up saving a lot of time, a lot of stress as an IT person, and you also save money for the organization you work for, and you actually have happier employees. And if they're happier and you save time and you save money, then you can afford better coffee for them, and then everybody wins.
That's fantastic. And now I got to start thinking about how I'm going to abstract my coffee consumption, just like we're going to be abstracting our deployment of virtual infrastructures. And I'm going to bring on Chuck Foley. Chuck, get nerdy on me here. How are we deploying and leveraging virtual desktops to better enhance our work environments and keep our employees happy, healthy, just like great coffee?
Well, first I have to say, now you know why I've been following this guy, Dave Asprey, for 15 years. He's a really unique blend of tech expertise and background with human perspective, but all focused on optimization and performance. And For you watching, that's why we here at NetApp asked Dave to spend some time with you today to talk about his perspective on coffee and virtual desktops. You see, NetApp has made some significant investments in the last couple of years around those areas, driving optimization and application-driven infrastructure. You might have seen that we made acquisitions of companies like Talon Storage, CloudJumper, most recently Spot, all about optimizing what our enterprise customers are doing for their users. Today, the topic is virtual infrastructure, and that really revolves around a new offering we have called Virtual Desktop Services, or VDS. So what is VDS? VDS is a global control plane that you can tap into so that you can deploy and provision, manage, and optimize your virtual infrastructure without having to know all about virtual desktop infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, storage, and networking. It's a service that will actually do it for you programmatically. And when I say do it all for you, I mean it will actually provision the underlying cloud infrastructure of storage, networking, Active Directory policies on which you can then lay a Windows virtual machine infrastructure, be it the kind of the industry standard historically, remote desktop services, or Microsoft's newest offerings, Windows Virtual Desktop. It'll also then handle the user layer, profiles, permissions, and roles, and most uniquely, the application layer. So not only the Windows environment, but it will make sure if you have tens or thousands of virtual desktops, it manages that ongoing application stack for updates and security and interdependencies, et cetera. Finally, it will optimize your virtual desktop infrastructure. A lot of people that are moving to the cloud, especially post-COVID-19 with this kind of workload, are finding they're spending a lot of money on virtual machines that may be up and running when they don't need them, or way big ones that they provisioned, and people are only using a fraction of it, and that means a lot of waste. Virtual desktop services programmatically as an intelligent service will spin down machines you don't use, spin up machines that you need, provision high-performance resources like GPUs at the time you need them, et cetera. So how does this relate to coffee? Think about it. It's there right when you need it. You know, I don't know about you, but the first thing I do in the morning is I hit the Bulletproof Coffee. That's how I get my day going, and I'm immediately supercharged and ready to go. It's the same thing with virtual desktop services. They allow you to provision literally hundreds of users in minutes versus hours or days, deploy resources when they're needed, and get you moving in an always-on fashion. Second, it's universal. I will say this, coffee's universal. I travel the world, I do business in all kinds of countries. People say to me all the time, hey, let's get together over a cup of coffee. Nobody's ever said, hey, we got an issue to talk about. Can you and I share a glass of milk and talk about it? That's just not how the world works. It's universally coffee. The same thing with virtual desktop infrastructure and our VDS service. Let me give you an example. It works in all the major clouds, Azure, Amazon, Google. It handles all the primary virtual desktop types of RDS or WVD. It will work across different regions in the world, even your on-premise environment. And you do that through one cockpit, one console, one user ID and password login. You can literally do in minutes what would normally take days to do. So I think it's easier if you actually see this in person. So bear with me for the next 4 to 5 minutes. Let's watch VDS in action, delivering like a caffeinated marvel as it does days worth of work literally in 5 minutes.
Virtual Desktop Service allows you to deploy, manage, and optimize virtual desktop environments through a SaaS-delivered global control plane. Let's log into the web application and take a look at a couple of examples. I'll sign in here, accept my multi-factor authentication, and we'll go to our first example. In this case, we need to deploy a brand new Google environment into an empty Google project. So we'll start here by putting in a name so we know which environment we're talking about. We'll select Google and then click on Continue. We need to enter the project name, so I'll just copy a couple of those variables from my notepad here. We've set up a service account to allow us to run this programmatically. And then we just have to confirm that account with our private key, public key, private key pair, and we'll deploy to US Central. We can test that to make sure that all the information is correct and then continue. We also have to specify a couple passwords, one for the local machine until it joins the domain, and then our local SQL database. We'll choose an automatic creation for the SMTP account. This sends us notifications when a process is complete or if we have updates for the status of the environment. So I'll use that the same for all of these. And then I just need a username for the primary tech account and a password for that as well. Then we can continue. Don't need to save that for now. For Active Directory, we're going to create a new instance of that. But we can also integrate with existing Active Directories. And we'll use the automatic certification and wildcard naming that VDS provides. Again, you can override that with your own values if you choose to. We'll also choose multiple servers, so we have different roles here. The operating system 2016, and we don't want FTP, and we'll use the standard defaults for a single role server for each role. We'll put in a pretty standard IP address range here. I'll grab all the different subnets that we need, hit continue. We do have to license this for Microsoft SPLA. We can also use volume licensing on that as well. And that's all it took. As soon as I hit the validate button, it's going to go through and validate and build that environment out. It takes about 2 hours to do that piece. Our next task is we need to add users to our existing deploy for Windows Virtual Desktop. So I'm going to pick one of those environments to add a group of 50 users to an existing host pool. So I go to the Windows Virtual Desktop tab. I have the host pool for dedicated users. Every user gets their own machine, and I just need to add 50 of those relatively quickly. So we're going to select that particular pool. It's querying it for all its base information. We're going to go to the session host. We want to add 50 of these. It's looking up the different templates that we've built out for the environment. So I will choose my office worker one that I've previously built and select a machine size. And I'll select the middle storage type, and that's all it takes. Add session host, and away it goes. It's going to do all these in parallel, so each one of the machines will be built by talking right to the Azure API, and when they're completed, the machines will be joined to the host pool and joined to the domain, and then assigned to users so that the users can access those and start their work in a virtual environment. Our last example is to work with a task. Typically, our users are talking to a user profile that is stored on our NetApp storage layer, but these user profile folders tend to grow in size and they don't shrink automatically. So we're going to use our scripted events. Typically we use that for application installs, updates, and deletes, but in this case, we're going to use it for an activity to just compress those FSLogix containers. So I built my script by adding a PowerShell script, and I'm just going to build the event as well. So we're going to compress user profiles. We'll add the script, and we will select the deployment we want to target on this, which is FHU. I can target my different environments, obviously, with the same scripts. We'll enable that task, and we're going to do this on a scheduled basis. We can target this to other events like create server, completion, new user, delete user, those types of things. But in this case, we want to do this on a regular basis. So we'll pick a recurring weekly date. Let's say we're going to do this on Saturday morning, so we don't bother anyone. So we'll do 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. AM, and we will target the servers in the environment. Click all of them, and all servers will be targeted for decreasing the compressed user files for that piece of it. And that's all it takes to add the activity. As these short examples demonstrate, Virtual Desktop Service allows administrators to execute common deployment and management tasks with minimal effort and consistent execution.
You know, that's amazing. If you know anything about virtual desktop infrastructure, you can't tell me that you don't feel like you just got 4 or 5 shots of espresso after seeing what happened there in literally 5 minutes. Think about it. What you just saw was tens, if not hundreds of users provisioned in Active Directory with their storage infrastructure set up, their network infrastructure set up, everything done in Google in literally minutes. And then dozens of brand new users to an existing host pool in another part of the world in Azure, another whole cloud provisioned, and then systems management level work, like go to all of my users and do storage level optimization, all done in 5 minutes. That would normally be probably man days if you were doing this step by step manually. Now, what you didn't see was, and only because we only have so many minutes, right, is the cloud cost being cut by approximately 50% by recapturing unused cycles, powering down VMs that at that point in time in the day or night are not being used, or automatically provisioning high-powered resources like GPU for designers and graphics need as needed. So, man, after that level of tech caffeinization, I got to go get a donut now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw this to Greg so that he can tap into the panel to get their thoughts on what they just saw, what they're seeing in the virtual workspace, and what we're going to have to deal with.
That's fantastic, Chuck. And I feel like I got an injection of caffeine just from that demo alone. There's a lot going on there. And I just want to remind everybody, we're in just a few minutes, we're going to be kicking off our trivia contest. So please go to kahoot.it with the pin 492209. And I want to just quickly reintroduce our panel. Bob Medeo from Sharp, Scott Manchester from Microsoft, and Greg Schulz from Storage.io. And Bob, I want to focus on you for just a minute here. You know, Sharp works with businesses all over the world in their offices, whether they're in a formal office building or remote offices or even home offices. How are you seeing, what is your real world engagement with your customers of how they're adapting to this new reality?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And you're right. We do service customers of all types. And one of the parts of the business that's really growing and is moving forward is the managed services side. So we have a lot of customers coming to us, and frankly, COVID just turbocharged this whole thing, asking about their workspace experience. How do I take it home? How do I use it more easily? And that desktop, you know, some of that we do manage, we do all sorts of things, but really what they're asking for is to simplify the technology and give a consistent experience. And so when I heard about this event and connected and cloud, they're trying to figure out, especially in our smaller businesses that we do a lot of IT services for, how do I leverage the cloud? Do I leverage it? Where do I leverage it? How do I bring that to my desktop? Many of them didn't know what to provide to those end users when they went home, you know, from the traditional office. And a lot of the conversation wrapped around security too, right? You know, that is a big issue. Small businesses are maybe not 100% prepped for all of the potential, but being able to know that they can provide in a relatively easy fashion a desktop that has a lot of the security and backup and things like that ready is a huge conversation. And it's interesting for us as we've moved into things like Dynabook laptops and providing technology in the office. We're trying to make sure we have a lot of different answers that can help our customers as we provide them services. And so from like a managed services provider, the ability to be able to bring things up and manage them centrally and do it much quicker, it's a very interesting conversation on our side. But we're really seeing that, you know, hate to use the phrase, but the tip of the spear conversation is security. I'm sending my users home. Do I really trust all this? And we're looking at ways to bring all that technology in a different way and make it easy to use to end users. That seems to be what's really driving a lot of our conversations. And I don't know if that's a different driver than others are seeing around the enterprise and on other spaces, but that's been one of the biggest ones for us recently.
That's great. And Greg, I know that you spent quite a fair bit of time, particularly in Azure, and leveraging your own workspace environments and how you're engaging with your customers and clients. And I guess the burning question here is, how are you adapting, you know, in this new reality that we have these remote work environments that we have to leverage the technologies and the resources that we have available to us?
I mean, there's a couple key pieces that, you know, we've heard bits of this already. Is it's working smarter, working not just harder. But one of the big things that caught my eye is Dave mentioned about having that insight, that control, avoid flying blind, knowing what you have. And like Bob talked about, one of the big things is realizing is that we've got different kinds of users out there, the power users, the light users, those that are doing CAD, engineering, workflows, all these different things. And two things that really jump out at me is that, you know, when you're in the office, you might have that high-speed link. As more people work from home, and more importantly, as more people, instead of just working from home, work from the cabin or relocate further out into suburbia, they're not going to have that same high-speed link that you have as when you're closer in. It's that classic model that we've dealt with for years. And one of the big breakthroughs on this is certainly the security, the management, that insight, optimizing those links, but also thinning things down, making those desktops thinner, not just physically thinner, but all that content that ties into the caching, where you're actually saving all those data. You know what? When you travel, just like Chuck and everybody else, I've gotten to travel around the world, and I learned travel light. If you can travel on a backpack for a week, you're way, way ahead of the game. And the same thing is that as you're taking your desktop, physical, virtual, whatever it is, you've got to slim that down, make it such that you can travel light. You can get to your data from different places, but start packing light.
And Scott, you're living, eating, drinking, breathing this with obviously a global workforce that's leveraging Microsoft to enable these tools. There's some very obvious takeaways, right? With now that we're in this crisis and how we're working from remote, is there anything out of the ordinary that you're seeing, maybe a little bit unusual, that maybe wouldn't be intuitive to the average person that's working from home? What are some of the observations you have?
I think for all the virtualization admins that are listening in today, they're all saying, "I told you so," likely to their management team and the rest of the world, right? They've been preparing for this type of situation for a long time. And prior to COVID, we were definitely seeing a huge trend towards moving to moving to the cloud and enabling this global workforce and this gig economy, and with multinational corporations now providing better collaboration across different time zones and different regions of the world. These have all been core use case scenarios. I'd say that most of us on this call probably haven't seen many things that we're surprised about by this. Outside of perhaps just how fast people have adapted, seeing the productivity people have seen now in this new work from home environment. We've been measuring this a lot within Microsoft, and we've blogged a lot about, what we've observed both with our internal processes and tools, and then how we're seeing our customers leveraging all these technologies. And it's shocking how adaptive people have been. Thankful to, this community and all the work that they've done to prepare for things like this, prepare for events. And obviously there was a lot of scrambling that happened, in the March, April timeframe, but the dust is settled now in most enterprises, and they're finding that, things will probably never go back to normal. This created an awareness of just how viable this remote working scenario can work. Bob pointed out a couple of great examples of how this provides great security. Greg was talking about, I can move around now with a much lighter device and then leverage the cloud to provide that elastic compute. Charles talked about the fact that, they can resize VMs on demand, right? Well, that could be, a first line worker that's using lightweight applications today. Maybe, they get promoted to a new job, and rather than giving them a whole brand new machine, they simply resize the machine to the needs that they have at that point in time. All these things are things that we're probably not too surprised about as folks who've been swimming in this space for a long time. I think a lot of the users that are now benefiting from all these technologies are likely surprised about the productivity and flexibility that these technologies provide them.
Hey, if I could jump in. Sorry, Greg. Hey, if I could just build on that for a minute. One of the things that has faced us forever is the fact that, we get new things all the time, but what do? We take new things and we use them in old ways. That ties into what Dave was talking about a little earlier and what Chuck touched on and whatever. One of the things that I'm seeing is, and I'm sure we're all seeing this, is people are using their new desktop, they're using the virtual services, different things like that. But what do? They've got to make arrangements to go back in the office and bring their big giant monitor from their desktop back to home. So that's part of, we're still using old things. We can use old things in new ways, but we've got to start using new things in new ways.
I want to ask Dave. I think it's interesting. We kind of look at, Bob, Greg, and Scott, we all kind of look at this purely through the IT lens. I'm curious from your perspective, even though you got the IT background, is there anything surprising about this transit? Obviously, we were all surprised by this crisis, but is there anything that particularly struck you, especially as it relates to remote work, that caught you off guard, that maybe you didn't have anticipated beforehand?
I've been running Bulletproof from an island for 8 years, and we're a $100 million plus company that I founded. So I could do that because I understand virtual desktops, in part because I am a networking engineer by training. I can fix all my stuff. But it's gotten dramatically easier to have a team distributed across the country. In fact, I have 5 companies that I've founded, and Bulletproof is one of them. And when I look at things like doing the podcast with the distributed team, having the ability to turn on infrastructure wherever we need it, it's been liberating. So I felt personally, you know what, we've got this because we've always run it this way. And for people listening to this, if you start thinking about that, you realize that a large amount of office space might not even be necessary. In fact, I'm even learning that. So some of my team that was used to more travel, even me, I haven't traveled in quite a while, we're still actually doing well. We're doing our job right. And we're helping people, millions of people all at the same time. So it's making me rethink how much travel we needed and how much more I should invest in my local desktop infrastructure and my virtual desktop infrastructure. Because frankly, I don't want an army of support people. I don't want really large support contracts either with an army of desktop support people to try and support people in 25 states as a small company, much less a medium-sized company like Bulletproof. So what it means is if I can have VDI, I can have contractors work. So it's been a really powerful, validating experience for me, but I thought I was distributed enough. Maybe I wasn't, even with the high degree of distribution I have now. So I think it's going to empty offices out quite a lot. So if you're looking for an office space, virtual desktop is actually going to drive leases down everywhere.
It's funny. One of the things that we're seeing, because a lot of folks use our devices in an office, obviously, and now increasingly in their home office. But we're also trying to build for even those we expect some percent are all going to be back in offices, but maybe a very different percent than we might have guessed 6 months ago. But how do you build it to be so simple, whether it's the desktop they use or the devices when they show up at that office? Because we all know that conference room that we were used to walking into every other day. If you're now there a lot less, you don't want to have to relearn all the systems. So how do you make sure that the desktop and the software that runs in there can authenticate you to that meeting room so you can have an experience like hopefully we're giving everyone on YouTube, I will watch later, this perfect experience. So it's really easy to use everything, and staying in that Microsoft environment, make all that authentication work is a big focus of ours, because it's more like it's not the no office environment, but maybe it's a less office environment. How do you make that when you go back easier? Part of that's the desktop experience.
Chuck, you want to jump on that?
Yeah, it's fine. I'm listening to all this. I'm listening about use new technology in new ways, be prepared, change the user's work experience. I have a really interesting aspect of my role here in NetApp is I talk to customers pretty regularly, 3, 5, 10 a week. And recently, what I've been hearing from some of our large customers around the globe is this idea of virtual desktop infrastructure, which has been around for a long time. It's been kind of I don't mean this in the pejorative, but it's been a second-class citizen. VDI is something you've used as a fallback. My PC is broken, IT is fixing it, I'll have to use VDI. It's something you've used if you're not one of the trusted members of the company. Okay, I'm a contractor, I sign on, I get that. I'm a lower level of employee. VDI, virtual infrastructure, is raising in its importance, and a lot of this is due to the COVID-19 reality that we're facing, and the ability now, through what Microsoft has done, through what we have done, the ability to have literally unlimited desktop power at your fingertips. So now virtual infrastructure is becoming not a second-class citizen, not a fallback, not an insurance level. It's become a primary way of deploying resources. You heard Scott talking about before about what if you grow in your career from a lower level guy that gets the inexpensive laptop to a medium level guy that gets a little bit better laptop to the executive that's got the pièce de résistance. You can have that immediately now in virtual desktop infrastructure. And as Greg said, the other theme that's coming across loud and clear is security and compliance. Imagine if you got 5,000 employees running around the world with a brick that holds important company data on it. Lots of things can happen to that brick. It can get lost. It can get dropped in the ocean. It can have a USB stick plugged into it. Somebody can look over the shoulder. Guess what happens when that environment is now in the cloud somewhere and you're accessing it through some device that has a secured link? You have just greatly expanded your auditability and security and control. That's what we're seeing and hearing, and that's why we're excited about this trend that's going on and why we made these investments.
If I could jump on that and build off. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Greg.
mean, Chuck, you hit a key tenet, which is similar to the server virtualization. We're seeing the same thing with the desktop, which was initially server was all about consolidation, squeezing, cutting costs, as opposed to enabling productivity, enabling management, agility, all these other things that, those that were only looking at things through the eyes of squeezing, compacting, compressing, they missed the bigger, broader world of virtualization, life beyond consolidation. And I'd say we're seeing the exact same thing now with VDI. It's not just about that thin client. It's about having that robust client, whether you're doing CAD work, engineering, whatever it happens to be. That's where the real enablement comes into.
And let's jump on that for just 1 second. Chuck, we've got an opportunity for folks. We got to do our customary plug with this, of course. So folks go to ntapp.com/connected. What can they experience when they sign up for a trial or the demo that we've been discussing?
Well, one of the things that we're going to make available to people is the chance to see how easy it is to provision, deploy, and even manage virtual desktops on our nickel. So if you go to the site that is going to be made available to you, you'll have the ability to request access to a 30-day live sandbox environment. You will get user ID and password where you can literally deploy and manage up to 50 virtual desktops and use them and do whatever you want for the next 30 days. See how easy it is to set them up, tear them down, change applications, change user levels, etc. Very cool.
And that URL again is ntapp.com/connected. It's also, you'll see it on your screen here. But before we move on to what I think hopefully will be a very exciting trivia contest, Chuck, I just wanted to ask you real quick, in your experience that you're talking with customers, generally, what's the single biggest pain point that you're seeing? What's obviously besides that our work environments are changing, where we're working from is changing. Is it the primary issue security? What's the key driver here for the transformation beyond the obvious challenges?
The key driver is the ability to move at the speed business needs to move at. It's really all about business agility. It's the ability to have people enabled to do the job, whether I'm a bank or an airline or a manufacturer or a distributor or a media company, when I need it. And that has a whole bunch of pain points under it, which really revolve around two things, which is my horsepower, how many people I have to set this stuff up and get it running, and competency. Do I have people that know about Windows desktops, that know about virtual infrastructure, which is different, it's another layer, that know about cloud infrastructure, yet another layer, that know about Active Directory, which is yet another layer. And that's really, if I can address those, have it done for me, and I don't need all that competency, I can probably move much faster to respond to the needs of the business.
That's fantastic. And let me just do a quick reminder to everybody. We're going to be jumping into the trivia contest here. Go to Kahoot, KAHOOT.IT, and the PIN number is 492209. And with that, Chuck, I want to turn it over to you. Now, just so our whole audience knows, Chuck came up with these questions. So I hold no responsibility to the quality of these questions, Chuck, and you're going to guide us through this. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. After the trivia is done, by the way, we will reach out via email for anyone who actually wins the prizes. So you're going to be prompted through these questions. You see up on the screen right now the PIN number. You don't have to download the app. You can go to KAHOOT.IT and enroll. Enter the PIN number. You will have a game name assigned to you, and then afterwards we can tie that back. So let me have a few seconds, and the questions will begin after everybody gets an opportunity to join into this game.
You know, building off what you said about the drivers while we wait for it to kick off, you know, I definitely think when you talk about meeting at the speed of business, you know, it's interesting because there's a lot of responding going on, and I think in the smaller companies, well, we see it's that IT is fundamentally feeling more complex, and any of these solutions that remove that complexity, it's also why they come to partners, answer the security challenge, simplify the technology deployment. So I think it's an interesting lens on the same challenge, which is I want to feel comfortable that you know, we can get that experience where users are going to be productive, even though I know my people can't maybe do it. It's why the managed services teams, folks like us in the IT side, are helping out. But it's technology like this that's going to probably help make that a lot more accessible to more folks.
Yeah, I love build on that real quick is while we're waiting for the players to come in, is part of that operating at that speed of business is also removing the complexity, removing the problems. In other words, where is the problem? Isolate it quickly instead of the classic, it's over here, no, it's over there, oh, it's over there, whatever. Identify the problem, fix it quick.
Yep, exactly. And I'm loving these screen names. I'm cheering for Smooth Chicken, by the way. I'm sorry, who did I interrupt?
No, nobody. Go right ahead. All right.
Well, there's some good ones in here. I'm waiting to see like Blind Mill and Chitlin.
Green Ferret.
Green Parrot. Lucky Camel.
All right, we're getting ready to start. We're going to, if you are entering your screen name, then we're getting ready to start in just a couple of seconds. When we start it, we will have a question. You will see usually 3 or 4 answers to the question, and then you will be able to, on your screen, select the color and symbol associated with that in order to give your answer. I will tell you, answer fast, because you get points not only for answering the right question, you get points for how quickly you do. So if everybody answers everything correctly, whoever answered faster is going to win. And we are giving away free copies of Dave Asprey's best-selling book, Superhuman. So you don't want to miss out on that. You want to get in there fast. So for our team that is starting these questions, I'm going to give you a countdown now. I want you to start.
Hey, Chuck, can we play? Can we play along? Or are we just commenting on it?
No, you can't play.
Oh.
You're supposed to know this stuff anyway. You're a panel.
I thought you were Amazing Yak. All right.
Come on.
I know you want a copy of Dave Asprey's book, and I didn't want to tell people this, but that's what I got you for Christmas. Okay, so just relax. You'll get it. So we're going to start it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's kick that game off. Okay, here comes our first question. You should have heard the answer to this already. What is the unique benefit of NetApp's virtual desktop service? Is it that it's a virtual desktop management for AWS, Azure, GCP, and on-premise? Or that it works with Microsoft's WVD without requiring any other components? Or the way that it's charged, hourly versus a one-time license? You have a few seconds that you can think about and then answer this. Panel, you're not allowed to give any hints here, although you can say whatever wonderful things that you want to about NetApp's virtual desktop service.
So we can provide lifelines.
If someone knows how to get a hold of you, yes, we will allow a phone a friend. Cannot be in the chat, has to be actually to your cell phone.
I'm actually texting Greg directly right now with a question. Not about this.
I wouldn't, because he doesn't respond to me on text. You got to call him on a
Just a minute. We're supposed to do this officially, so just hang on.
All right, we have some people that got it right. Obviously, people are listening. That's good. Let's go to the next question, team. Good job, Smiling Egret. Closely followed by Happy Lemming. All right, second question. What areas of virtual desktop infrastructure does NetApp's virtual desktop service automate? Is it your cloud purchasing management and data encryption, your infrastructure deployment and provisioning management and optimization, your DR, data integrity and HIPAA compliance, or your user access, file visibility, and Windows updates? Okay, this one's getting a little more technical. You might have to know a little bit about IT or virtual desktops to win this.
You didn't even throw in anything like something about making coffee or, a head fake.
Wait for it.
I'm recommending that after you answer this question, jump over to your browser search window and ask, what are the ingredients of Bulletproof Coffee? I'm just saying, I would think that would be in here somewhere, because it comes up literally every day in conversation for me.
Can you guys make a virtual desktop infrastructure management solution that includes coffee that comes out of the virtual desktop? Because I would sign up for 2 of those.
And butter.
There you go. Of course.
It's in development.
Look at that. We got 21 right answer. I love that. That means people are, let's go to the next question. People are actually listening to what we're saying here. That's awesome. Still a tight race between Smiling Egret and Happy Lemming, but Expert Sphinx is coming up rapidly. So let's go to the next.
It's getting tight.
People want that book, Dave. Oh, imagine that. What are the key ingredients in making bulletproof coffee? Is it toxin and mold-free coffee with grass-fed butter and MCT oil? Or is it coffee, MCT oil, and collagen protein? Or is it coffee, butter, and honey, but not sugar? Or butter, honey, coffee, and distilled water?
Wow, you made this hard.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering.
Are you checking your own notes over there? What's going on?
This is serious. We're into some serious stuff here.
Look at all those answers. So many people in IT use this.
Can butter eat coffee? I'm sorry. Can butter eat grass?
Can
Grass-fed butter?
If it's really
comes
hungry,
from
it
grass.
can. It's very disturbing to watch. I recommend you not look that up on YouTube.
Greg, I'm assigning you assigned reading after this session.
Okay. I think I have a pretty
Greg,
good
butter is a byproduct of grass.
Okay. Yes, it is a byproduct.
I need to spend some time on Wikipedia.
Pretty good. Obviously, people understand the bulletproof methodology because they know it's toxin and mold-free coffee that you got to start with before you add the grass-fed butter and the MCT oil. That was a tough one, so let's see if it changed. Hit next, and let's find out if it changed the leaderboard. I did change the leaderboard, but not between the top two. But Captain Mouse is on the move. He's on the way up, followed by a cute hamster. So let's hit the next one. What do I need to install in order to use NetApp's virtual desktop services? Either nothing, because it's a SaaS service that I can just tap into to get credentials, or a Windows virtual machine, or a Chromebook or a tablet, or any HCI platform running VMs, vSphere, Active Directory, and an SQL Server instance. This truly taxes the mind of those IT professionals that are on Bulletproof. And I think we're going to find out here which ones are using toxin and mold-free coffee versus regular coffee. Right, Dave?
It's pretty much a clear differentiator. If you get this right, it's what was in your coffee.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like what we learned here is that, Dave, is that mold is good in cheese, but not in coffee.
There you go.
It's just not the grass-fed butter. Or
not the
cheese
grass-fed.
there. Yeah.
Okay.
Not the grass-fed cheese?
Not the grass-fed cheese.
Unless it's from Parma.
Oh, wow. A lot of people won't get that.
Nice. That's good. People realize that NetApp has already made it easy for you. We've got the virtual desktop service set up for you. All you got to do is sign on with a user ID and password. You don't need to install any infrastructure or anything. Next.
Oh.
Smiling Egret. Look at the mouse. The mouse
Captain
is on
Mouse on fire.
The mouse is literally seconds behind the lemming.
Oh.
All right. And what's next? 5. This is the 5th of 6. VDS supports which remote desktop options in Azure? Is it RDS? Is it WVD, Windows Virtual Desktop? Is it both of them? Or is it none of the above?
This feels like a layup to me.
Yeah.
You know, after we taxed everybody's brain on the last one, we decided we got to make it a little easier.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if the mouse can mount a comeback on this one.
I'm still cheering for Green Ferret. I don't know what happened to Green Ferret.
I will tell everybody that Scott Manchester, and remember, he ran the program that brought Windows Virtual Desktop to market. If you're a fan, he's watching, so you better get this one right.
He's an insider.
So if you're gonna use a friend, he's the one on this call to use.
He's the guy, and his number is area code 206. Okay.
No, and Scott, I don't want to make you feel bad. I worked for the guy who designed the protocols for RDS. Reported to him years ago in my career, so I think we've got both sides covered.
Who
We got
that?
it both more than you know, Dave, because both A and B is the right answer. So we do
There
have
you go.
both sides covered. With VDS, you get to do either or both simultaneously anywhere in the world. All right, and let's hit next.
Oh,
Okay. Lemming and Egret are still out. What happened to the mouse and the hamster? They dropped off. Where did they go?
Making coffee.
expert Sphinx on fire.
A couple of bad questions. Let's hit next and go to the final question. This is your chance. You got to go fast, mouse and hamster. On average, how much will NetApp's virtual desktop services technology save you in your infrastructure spend? 15%, not bad. 25%, pretty good. 50%, which is really good, or 75%, which one? How much is on average NetApp's technology going to save your cloud infrastructure costs with VDS? This is not to be confused with what discount will Dave give you on Bulletproof Coffee when you order directly from the website.
Or would that be the average discount?
I don't know. Dave gives me an average discount of 0. He says, you know me, you ought to be buying it from me anyway. And I do.
You know, I make it affordable for everyone. That's the goal.
Bestseller Superhuman.
A French press full of mentalists right here.
The prize here is Superhuman. Was a New York Times bestseller for a few weeks, and it's how I'm planning to live to at least 180. So if you get this right, it could literally double the amount of time you could spend using virtual desktops.
That's right. Hey, look at this. Pretty even split. The right answer is 50%. I wish it was 75%, but at 50%, that's nothing to be ashamed of. So that's a great savings on your cloud infrastructure.
I can't wait to see who's taking the lead here.
Let's find out.
I can't.
Let's hit next. Let's see where they stand. Cute Hamster got the bronze. Happy Lemming got nudged out by just a very few points by Smiling Egret.
Wow.
Smiling the whole time I was smiling.
What is it with rodents today? I'm glad the rodents came through, but
it's a grass.
I think lemmings are fish. Just.
Well, this is absolutely fantastic. And Chuck, like you mentioned, we're going to be reaching out to all the big winners for the trivia contest. They're going to be getting a free copy of Superhuman. But we also want to entice folks that want to kick the tires on the demo. Chuck, if they sign up, I think we were going to do the first 50 people that register for the kicking the tires in the sandbox. They're going to get a copy of Superhuman.
That's right. If you go to the link that Greg had given you, you can also find the link on the landing page that you may have used in order to get to today's session. The first 50 people that sign up for the free sandbox, again, it's an environment that you can use and play with live. The first 50 people will also get a copy of Dave Asprey's best-selling book. So first 50, like I said, you move fast, you get more points. Go now. And I'm gonna end up going to the store and buying it myself, apparently. So, but that's all right. I can't wait. Christmas, actually, Christmas present. Oh, Christmas. That's right. All right. I guess I got to wait for months now to read the book. Yes, thanks, Chuck.
Guys, you do want to sign up and get it if you can. I am an IT guy. I think like an IT guy, and I know how to write really well. But if you think about virtual desktops as a part of your life, you think about caching, you think about infrastructure, you are going to vibe with what I'm saying here. You can manage your biology the way you think of systems management, and it is liberating to have your brain work all the time. So that's what it's all about. And that's so fantastic, Dave. It's been a real treat to have you on our Ready, Set, Connected Workforce. Such great insight. And I think we've answered the question, what does great coffee have to do with virtual infrastructures? So thank you. Chuck, also, thank you very much. You got nerdy with us. We got into some details. We learned a lot this week. And Bob, my old friend, we've got a work history together. I'm so glad you were able to join us and certainly bring the perspective of the work that Sharp is doing in this space. Greg Schulz, again, also great friend, and appreciate you being a part of this. And Scott, fantastic to have you on and representing Microsoft. And I actually kind of privately wish that Scott was part of that trivia contest, and so we could kind of grade how he did on this. But maybe we'll save that as an outtake for this. We'll see what Scott can do. And thank you to our audience. And again, the website we want everybody to go to, ntap.com/connected. You can get more details there, register for the trial, and get a copy of Dave's Superhuman book. And
Just once again, thank you, everybody. Thank you for your participation, your questions in the chats. We look forward to doing this. We do this every month. We look forward to having you join us next month. Thank you, everyone.